A pale young girl lay restlessly on the bed, her face furrowed with pain as flashes of blood, knives, and a speeding car filled her mind. Her eyes flew open as she gasped for air, her breath raspy. Her icy blue eyes grayed out, devoid of light, and stared into nothingness. Sweat had glued her black and white hair to her skin. Ariella rubbed her forehead and sighed. These flashes from her past life came and went, occasionally recurring in dreams. She could remember when she first arrived in this world, a helpless blind baby, dropped in the abyssal forest and left for the abyssal monsters that roam this world. Avernon, a world where abyssal beasts, dragons, and humans coexist. Ariella, get up, it's time for the test. A voice called from outside the door. Ariella's ears twitched toward the sound. Through her unique vision, she saw a human-shaped energy outline standing outside the door. Seeing the aura, the only thing could perceive with her eyes, she responded calmly, already used to her friend's hasty nature. There's no rush. Even if we get there on time, the noble girls will go first, Ariella said as she stood up, feeling for her cane. She found her clothes and her pale fingers traced the buttons as she fastened her top. Her steps were confident as she left the room, fully familiar with the orphanage's layout. She saw the greenish, human-shaped aura brighten and knew Mary was excited for the big day. To Ariella, it felt like just another day. She hoped her peaceful life wouldn't change. She had promised herself, after surviving the bombing accident in her past life, that she would never return to her former profession as a killer. She was very grateful to whatever powers made that possible. I will guide. We need to hurry, Mary said anxiously, clearly worried that if Ariella didn't walk faster, they might miss the event. Mary was desperate to be selected for dragon energy resistance. The alternative, joining the soldiers in the war against beasts, terrified her. She hopes to be picked for dragon resistance energy. She doesn't want to join the soldiers in war against the abyssal beasts. The sound of horse hooves and seller loud bargains filled the air, and sounds and scents from different directions flooded into Ariella's mind. She could feel the liveliness in the atmosphere. Different aura colors fluttered about. Even the grass emitted beneath her feet. She wasn't bothered by her blindness. Her sight before brought her only pain and indifference. As far as there was life in anything, she could see their aura, whether good or bad. She was dragged to the square, girls of different bodies, sizes, and ages. Gathered in a line, each spotting degrees of excitement and nervousness. Today was a turning point for some and a disappointment for some. In front of the queen was placed a large gray crystal. A castle guard stood beside the crystal and called for the girls to place their hands. Next! The guard shouted for the next person when the crystal didn't react. The girl begged to have another try but was removed forcefully from the square. This process continued, reaching their turn. Mary's hand turned sweaty. Ariella sensed it and patted her hands in comfort. We are up next. Mary's tones sounded in a whisper, holding Ariella's hand tightly. Ella, I am scared, what if? Mary's shaking voice was caught shut by the glance of the guard. With trembling hands, she placed it on the crystal and watched it tremble and hum with energy. Pass. Move to the left. The man's flat tone startled Mary awake. Her eyes widened in daze as she moved to the left. Her heart shook with excitement, and she almost screamed out, but remembering the occasion she suppressed herself, looking anxiously at Ella. Ella, with a calm mind, placed her heart, feeling she wouldn't be picked, but shockingly the crystal vibrated, stunning her in place. Pass. Move to the left. The man repeated his words in a robotic tone, unaware of Ella's chaotic heart. She followed Mary's aura color and moved towards her. We passed. Oh my, this is a life-changing moment for us. Mary whispered excitedly and hugged the dumbfounded Ella tightly. Ella could sense her peaceful life at this moment was over. 6 years later, in a mansion in the capital of Elendor, a black and white-haired woman swung her blind cane. She was covered in sweat as she swung the cane, the force making cutting sounds in the air. Ariella practiced for an hour, her body soaked in sweat before she called in the maid to bring in her bathwater. Soaking in the water, she remembered how she and Mary were whisked away by some noble under the pretext of adoption. At the age of 14, when they both passed the dragon energy resistance test, it was then they were thrust into the world of nobles and knew the truth. They were going to be sent to the dragon realm as brides. In turn, the dragons will give them mana stones to fight against the abyssal beasts. A clear transaction between humans and dragons. I hope I can crave out the peaceful life I want, she thought out loud, her tone sounding hopeful. Ella, are you done yet? I'm coming in. Mary's ladylike voice, which changed after the passage of time, echoed through the room. Ariella was snapped out of her reminiscing thoughts. Hold on. Her calm tone was heard by Mary, who frowned at being kept waiting. Her eyes drifted to the wolf dog, Ella's pet and guide. White looked at the human in front of him and yawned, Dot's sharp fangs making Mary move back from fear. She hates coming here whenever this dog is here. Ella, come faster, or your dog will eat me. Her panicking tone left her lips, and she and the dog head gaze. Seeing Ella coming out, she was stunned for a second by her friend's beautiful, serene face. Her black and white hair gave her a unique look, with the lace covered around her eyes. Even if Mary saw Ella every blessed day, she was still moved by her otherworldly beauty and calm grace. She snapped away from her musing and grabbed Ella's hand under the low growling of White. We have things to buy. You know tomorrow is the day we are going for the dragon realm. She chattered endlessly as she listed the things to buy. Ella could only smile and follow along, already feeling mentally exhausted before the shopping. They walked through the busy streets, with carriages and horses storming past, and the air was filled with the smell of baked goods and the noises of the passers-by. Their eyes stopped on a beautiful young lady with white and black hair, noticing the lace wrapped around her eyes and the dog guiding her. Their expression flashed with pity. Ariella wasn't bothered by the emotions she could glimpse from their auras. She took in deep breaths, enjoying being surrounded by sounds and colors. Ella, we should buy this balm. Smell. Doesn't it smell like flowers? Mary called her attention, bringing the balm to her nose to sniff. Ariella sniffed it and sensed the fragrance was not as good as the ones she made. We cannot. You know Duke Alaric gave us a tight budget. We have not purchased food and other necessities yet. Her calm words poured cold water on Mary's emotions. Mary's mood sank a little, but she knew Ella was right. She looked longingly at the balm and dropped it under the dissatisfaction of the seller's gaze. The seller snorted in her mind. She saw a pair of beautiful high-born ladies, thinking she had business, not knowing they were too poor to even buy a balm. She snorted loudly at their leaving backs, making Mary flush with embarrassment. Ariella didn't have much of a reaction to the woman's rudeness. She consoled her friend. I can make you a better scented balm than that one. You only need to get me your favorite flowers and tell me the type you want, Ariella suggested warmly, and Mary looked at her in suspicion, not believing she'd do the work of a skilled apothecary. Forget about it. I know you are trying to console me. Don't force yourself, Mary said in a light tone, waving her request off. Let go buy some pants. I heard from the Duke's daughter's discussion with the maid that the terrain was rough, with hills and mountains, so we have to forgo our normal way of dressing. Mary said calmly, but her face was a mask of pain, having to let all her gowns go to waste. A depressed sigh left her lips. Ariella almost smiled from joy as she thought, finally, I will be free from this cursed gown. She missed the trousers of her past life. The gowns here were so confiding, and it made walking normally an exhausting affair. Let's go. Her voice barely hid the joy as she urged Mary to move faster. They walked around the market, their hands filled with things they bought. The sun was setting by the time they returned to the Duke's house. Before they could retire to their quarters, a maid stopped them. His Grace requests your presence. The maid's tone was flat, with no form of respect to be found. In her mind, they were strays picked up to help Lady Leora in the dragon realm. Ariella's expression cooled, but outwardly she remained calm. She followed along. She could feel Mary tense at the mention of that perverted lord. If they were not to be sent as a dragon's bride, the man would have had his way with them as early as 18. But that didn't stop him from making uncomfortable advances at them. If it was the old her, he would have found his lower half cut off and served to him as a dish. She could only hold off on her anger. It would be disadvantageous to attack him. Having no power with her blindness, it would be hard to survive this world with Mary brought along. She released the dog. They arrived in a study. This time, Ariella saw another aura beside him and knew instantly who it was. Your wings had hardened to keep me waiting. I won't punish your disrespect. I am in a very good mood. Sit. A stern, authoritative tone filled the room, and Ariella felt around for the chair with Leora giggling softly under her pale fingers. She had purposely asked the maid to push the chair against the wall. She wanted to watch Ariella's joke. But she lost interest when she didn't see Ariella's losing her composure, but she stood with an air of otherworldliness, making her feel her petty actions were beneath her. Leora frowned. She glared at Ariella with jealousy and turned her head away. Mary snapped out of her fear and brought the chair closer for Ariella to sit. Ariella nodded gratefully at her and sat slowly. Alaric's gaze was on Ariella as she entered the room. His gaze almost undresses her silk gown. He shakes his head internally from regret. If she was not one of the selected few, he would have claimed since he was tempted, but he dared not bring Dragon's wrath on him. His expression turned serious. You will be leaving for the Dragon's realm tomorrow. He stared at three of them, making sure they focused on his words before he continued. The House of Magsworth has poured resources into your growths all these years. It is now you pay it back. Marry a high-ranking dragon lords, if not the king's. I trust all of you would comply. His ambitious gaze stared at the beautiful women before him, and he was confident in their success. He pictured his rise in wealth and the power he would gain when any of them succeeded. Ariella could feel his greed dripping from his dark green aura. It was because the dragon laid a rule that the dragons who married a lady would have to pay a huge amount of their wealth to her family. A dragon's wealth was a point of desire for the nobles in this kingdom and beyond, because what the dragon had hoarded all his life was enough to buy a high-grade country an infinite number of times. After the resources agreed upon for the dragons to bring, it was the next thing the families of the selected looked forward to, not caring if their daughter would survive long enough in such a harsh realm. Ella nodded along, but she thought otherwise in her mind. As soon as she left for the dragon's realm, she would cut off everything to do with this Duke family. The chest of all her savings from selling her balm can pay for her and Mary's debt of upbringing. Ariella, dear, I have the utmost faith in you. Do not disappoint me. Alaric held her delicate, milky fingers, rubbing them gently. Ella felt a surge of disgust and nearly pulled away as he finally let go. You can all leave, Alaric commanded, his voice stern as he watched them go. Once alone, he brought the hand he had touched her with to his nose, inhaling her unique scent of lilies with a perverted smile. Guided by her cane and the flower's auras, Ariella made her way back to her quarters. As she entered, she called, "Get me 2 bowls of water quickly," to her personal servant. Within minutes, the bowls were placed down before her. She quickly picked up her soap and dipped her hands into the warm water, scrubbing each finger thoroughly until they turned red. "Pour this away and prepare a bath for me," she instructed. "Then go to Lady Mary's quarters to fetch the things I bought." She untied the lace wrap over her eyes, her vacant, icy blue eyes fixed ahead. As she waited for her bath to be ready, she felt White's presence. He barked to her and rubbed his body playfully around her legs. A smile broke out on her lips, and she bent her hands and ran through his fur. "What a good boy. Are you hungry?" She praised him and petted his fur. She looked in the direction of the dog and hoped she could take him with her tomorrow. Her hands running through the dog fur stopped. She remembered her business associate and stood up. Moving familiarly to her bed, she felt beneath it and retrieved a box. Her hands went for her neck, and she brought out a keychain. She felt for the hole and slotted it into the keyhole, unlocking it. A gold light shone towards the room. The box was filled with cold coins and a shell-like horn. Picking up the horn, her finger dipped into the hollow of the horn, feeling the embedded mana stone. She rubbed the shell, and it shone with light. "I will be leaving tomorrow and will not be able to do business. For your trustworthiness all these years of working together, I will leave 2 formulas of my balm, soap, and essential oils to you. If I can't take my dog, help me take care of him. Farewell." She put the formulas into the horn and rubbed the horn, and the lights dimmed. The shell, like a horn, was gotten from a fallen abyssal beast. Its function when mana stones are put in is to record words being said into it. "White, here, boy." She called out to the dog, putting the shell into a pouch, tied it around his neck, and patted his body to deliver the message. White was already familiar with the route, having done this several times. He ran out of the mansion and into the night to deliver the message. Ella arranged everything in order and sat back, remembering she had asked the servant to bring her bath water 30 minutes ago. She frowned, wondering what was keeping her. She could only sit and wait. Meanwhile, the servant was detained by Leora. The servant knelt on the ground and looked at the Duke's daughter with fear and confusion of being called here. Leora sipped her tea without rushing and watched the servant on the ground trembling pathetically. "My lady, how can I be of help? I need to prepare bath water for Lady Ariella." The maid stammered, her voice fearful. "Huh? You are dedicated to serving her. We will be leaving tomorrow and you will be out of work. What if I told you I could change your life forever, with more wealth you have ever dreamed of? That's if you would do a little thing for me. What would it be?" Her gentle tone whispered like a devil's whisper, tempting the woman to fall in. The woman was stunned by her words, just now realizing she would be out of work if Lady Ariella left. How would she save up money for her daughter's marriage or her son's education? The words "wealth to live out your life" appeared in her mind, and a flash of greed shone through her heart. "It is just a little thing. I don't have to worry too much." Her gaze turned firm, and she gazed at Leora. "My lady, what should I do for you?" she asked in an agreeing tone. A dark smile tugged across Leora's lips, sending goosebumps to the woman kneeling. "Very well. It's nothing much." Leora told the woman what she should do, and the woman's eyes widened. Fear grew in her heart as she looked at the beautiful woman in front of her. She was handed a vial filled with black liquid. Leora watched the woman go and called out her guard. "Follow her, once she's done with the task. You know what to do." Her tone was chilly as she signaled for him to slit her throat. The servant woman had wishful thinking she could enjoy wealth. What a delusional worm. The guard bowed and vanished into the air. Leora picked up her tea, and a satisfied smile crossed her lips. The woman went back, her heart beating loudly in her chest. The hand holding the vial trembled, but she held it firmly. "Lady, don't blame me. I have to feed my family." With these thoughts, her steps grew steady. "What delayed you?" Ariella asked calmly, not bringing her anger to the surface, but the woman felt ill at ease from her question. "My lady, the kitchen delayed me from getting hot water." She lied, her tone trembling slightly, but Ariella caught it immediately. She stared at the woman's aura and saw the blue around her had a faint red to it. Her heart sank at this discovery, her hands tightening on her cane. "My lady, I will go prepare you a bath," the woman said and left quickly, feeling uncomfortable under Ariella's blank stare. She felt subconsciously that her dark thoughts were exposed to Ariella and didn't know how true her thoughts were. "Why does my servant have evil intentions for me?" she thought, feeling confused and disappointed. She wanted to reward this woman for all her time serving her. Why didn't she hold on long enough? "Humans!" A sad sigh left her lips, but her heart flashed with coldness. The woman set the water, her eyes darting around as her heart pounded louder in her chest. She grasped the vial, uncovering it and pouring the whole content into the bath water. She watched as the black liquid dissolved in the water. As she straightened up, a shadow appeared behind her. She screamed, stumbling back into the water with a loud splash. Before she got out, a sizzling sound of burnt flesh spread through the room as the woman screamed in pain. "Help me?" She begged, but Ariella stood there coldly as the woman struggled with screams of pain coming out from her lips. So this was her faith if she had entered into the bath water. She thought, her heart chilled at the viciousness of this scheme. She could see the woman's aura dimming weakly, and the smell of burnt flesh filled her nose. A frown crossed her lips. She left the room and went to her room to sleep. Whoever sent this woman should clean up after themselves. She has to save her strength for tomorrow. Her only regret is that she won't have her night bath. A black shadow swapped into the room. Ariella picked up the sound, and her hand moved for her cane but paused when the person went to the side room where bath water was. The shadow looked at the weak woman in the bath. he swapped in and slit her throat soundlessly. The woman's eyes grew dim, and her last thoughts were filled with regret. The man cleaned up the crime scene swiftly, removing the woman's body. The man left to deliver the news of what had occurred while Ariella drifted into sleep. In the other quarter, sounds of breaking cups and angry screams echoed through the night. The next morning, lights shone in through the window on Ariella's figure. Her eyelid twitched before opening slowly. A smile left her lips as she watched particles of gold light flash around her. She took deep breaths, taking in the morning breeze into her lungs. It always amazes her when she sees the sun aura every morning. As she mused, she suddenly saw a large green aura covering the golden particles. She could hear the loud beating sounds of wings coming from the sky and almost thought the city was under attack. But she didn't hear the sound of the warning bells before her mind clicked that the dragons were here. She sat up from the bed quickly and wanted to call for her servant, then recalled what had happened yesterday, and she changed her direction to the door, her cane calmly tapping for direction when no plants were nearby to guide her with their auras. Ariella could only see their auras, but the whole city froze in awe and fear as they looked at the three enormous dragons up in the sky. Their body covered the sunlight, and their bodies were covered in sharp scales, as the wind from their beating wings pushed everybody backwards, scattering dust, looking like the start of a hurricane. Seeing they were in human civilization, they swooped down, landing on the ground before their bodies began to shrink, scales retracting as they transformed. When the dust settled, 3 men were standing in place with a fur bag across their waist. They opened the bags, taking out trousers, and as soon as they put them on, a carriage headed in their direction. When the horse got closer, they shrieked in fright, almost running mad. The 3 men noticed and reduced their dragon's breath from their bodies before the horse rider could control the horses to get closer to them. The carriage stopped, and a trembling middle-aged man came down. The guards escorting the carriage felt fear as they saw the 3 men. Their experiences in battling with the abyss made them sense these men were on a different level, and it's impossible to win against them in a fight. "Are the brides ready?" "Our travel is long," one of the men asked, his eyes falling on the trembling middle-aged man, who was so ridden with fear that he couldn't form words. The man nearly passed out in fear when he felt the man's predatory glance. On a normal day, he was known as the right-hand advisor of the king, oozing with confidence and charisma. But all of it was lost here, standing in front of such tall, muscular men who could destroy the country with just a blow of their dragon's fire. "Yes, honored guest, follow me to the castle." The man stuttered so badly that the 3 men frowned, smelling the stench of fear dripping from his being. The 3 of them exchanged glances and saw their frustrated glances. Wanting to go back to their lands, they leapt on the carriage roof, and the blue-haired man motioned with his hands for them to go. He had a feeling if he talked to the middle-aged man, he might faint. The guards held the noble into the carriage and whipped the ground, making the horses move. Reaching the city, the lively city was empty as a ghost town, but the 3 of them could feel fearful, curious glances coming from closed windows. Meanwhile, the brides' families all over the town and inns packed their daughters' belongings, some hugging them with ears in their eyes, others telling them to marry a dragon lord and bring honor to their family names. Ariella, Mary, and Leora's boxes were packed. Alaric looked at Ariella with a regretful gaze. Ariella felt a heated gaze. From his aura, she knew instantly who it was. "Your Grace, I left something in my room for you. Goodbye," Ariella said from outside the carriage opening. Alaric felt touched, thinking she was grateful for their upbringing. Even his tone grew softer. "Remember, bring glory to the Magsworth family." As he said this, he tapped the horse's body, signaling for them to take off. He quickly turned back and strode to Ariella's quarters, a smile forming on his lips when he entered to see a box with a recording shell on top. He opened the box first and was blinded by the golden light. His heart was shocked, wondering how much money could be in her hands. He rubbed the shell. "If you are hearing this, it means I have left for the Dragon Realm. This money covers the cost of my and Mary's upbringing. I assume you accepted." With this, we sever our ties to House Magsworth." Alaric's eyes grew dark from anger, falling to the ground in a faint. The stimulation was too much for him to handle. The carriages carrying the women moved swiftly towards the castle, the thunder of horses' hooves resonating as they galloped to their destination. Upon arrival, the carriages were parked, and the women stepped down and were quickly ushered into the castle where the dragons awaited. Tension, nerves, and fear filled the air as the ladies faced their uncertain futures, whispering as they were asked to wait. More than 200 women gathered. Ladies were hushed when they saw their princess joining the line as well. "Ella, I'm so nervous," Mary whispered in Ariella's ears, her voice shaking slightly. She had always waited for this day, but now the day was here. She grew more nervous and afraid of the unknown. Ariella didn't offer words to soothe Mary's fear. She too was uncertain about their futures, though otherworldly she was her usual calm. Leora left immediately to go to her high-born friends. The crowds had a subtle class differentiation. The nobles stayed on one side, with the merchants and commoners on another group. Suddenly, the whispers ceased, and Ariella could see 3 burning auras. They held such intensity that she broke out in cold sweat. The others could only see 3 tall, handsome men. They flushed, seeing their bare upper bodies. They walked with a silent power of dangerous predators. The 3 men's aura softened, not wanting to scare the brides. In their realm, they treasured women. No dragon, whether noble or normal dragon, would disrespect women. They were the head of the family of every triad dragon. "Brides, we triad are called Hunter, Grey, and Damien. We are your escort to the dragon realm." The gray-eyed man introduced himself and his triad. His deep, calm voice echoed through the room, making some girls blush and feeling tingles crawl down their spines. "But first, we have to go through the test again. Pardon me." Before the ladies could understand what he meant, the 3 dragons released their dragon's breath, covering the room with potent energy which hummed in the air. If any male and female without dragon energy resistance were here, they would bleed profusely from all their senses, and in the worst case, die. Ariella watched their auras forming into enormous beasts covering everywhere, and she frowned with confusion at what their actions meant. Instantly, as the aura released, it retracted, and the air turned lighter, and the 3 men were glad to see none of the brides reacted to their dragon's breath. "You all passed. We will be leaving now. The journey is far." Grey, the head of their triad, informed the brides. He motioned them to follow him outside. Ariella was grateful she gave out her dog at the last minute, or he might have died. Her black blind stick tapped the floor as she followed the crowd. Hunter noticed she was blind and hung a few feet away from her to help in case she needed it. Mary had forgotten her friend after being swept away from the crowd of ladies heading outside. Ariella had to follow last, not wanting to be caught in the crowd. When she went outside, she felt the air freeze and saw sips of fear from the women's auras, and felt confused until her eyes landed on the enormous aura, which was shaped in the form of a clawed monster. Shrieks of fear left some of the women's lips. They couldn't believe they would have to climb on this beast back to go to the dragon realm. Some were exaggerated and dropped in a faint. "Apologies, brides. We swear on our dragon's heart we won't hurt a hair on your body. This is our true form," Hunter said in a soft tone, trying to soothe their fears, which worked for some, but their bodies were still trembling when they were helped up on Grey's dragon form. Some bold ones curiously tailed their hands off the scales and retracted their hand immediately when they felt the coldness from it. While some of them shut their eyes tightly, the fainted ones were laid gently. The dragon was so huge it contained 200 females, with enough space to spare. Grey blew out a potent invisible dragon energy from his mouth, covering the females on his back. It formed an invisible dome around them, protecting them securely against wind and flying creatures. On Damien's dragon's back, their belonging was placed. Only Hunter had nothing on his. They beat their wings, covering everywhere with sand and dust. 3 dragons took to the sky, and some women moved, peered down, and watched their kingdom turn small from such height. Mary had finally seen Ariella and moved fearfully towards her. Mary's heart was beating loudly in her chest, her imagination running wild. Picturing all of them falling from the sky straight down, she shook her head and quickly shut her eyes to remove those horrible thoughts from her mind. "Ella, I'm envious of you at this moment," Mary commented carelessly, feeling her friend couldn't see a huge dragon and such fear-inducing height. Not knowing Ariella's heart was soaked in happiness at seeing the cloud's aura closely, she could see blue smoke floating by, and she watched happily, her hands stretched out to touch one of them, but she couldn't, being they were far away but looked closer, plus the dome around them made it impossible. She retracted her hands in disappointment before facing Mary. "How would the dragon realm look like?" Mary said, making a thinking sound under her breath before she continued dishing out her absurd idea to Ariella. "Maybe they live in the cloud, imagining everywhere covered in white, or they live in the sea." Ariella sighed helplessly. "Stop with your wild thoughts. When we get there, you will find out." She couldn't help but interrupt Mary before she said they leave on the moon next. Selena, the third princess of Elendor's kingdom, looked at her competitors riding with her and wasn't pressured in any way. The ones that would give her more pressure were the other princesses of other kingdoms. Her father had gotten first-hand information from the dragons. Their kings were choosing a bride this year. "I must become their queen," she thought, her eyes filled with ambition and determination. "Your Highness, do you have an idea where we are going?" A brown-haired woman asked quietly, hoping the princess might have information. Selena faced the woman with a calm, gentle smile. "I don't know as well. I am just as clueless as you." Her gentle voice floated into the ears of others who were secretly listening in. Other ladies sighed from disappointment internally and could only wait patiently. Hours passed, passing vast oceans and landscapes. At some point, some women enjoyed the sight, and some slept feeling bored. Ariella enjoyed the colors around her. She lay against the dragon's scale, trailing her fingers along their smooth, warm surface, her mind piecing together an image of their aura's colors rather than their physical form. She stayed still enough that Gray barely noticed her move. Suddenly, a deep roar broke the silence, and everyone sat up, looking around anxiously. A moment later, they tilted to the side, passing through what looked like a film-like doorway. As they crossed, the dragons straightened, and gasps of amazement filled the air as breathtaking sights unfolded before them, making them forget their earlier fear. They could see huge mountains scattered across the kingdom, a wide forest filled with wildlife that spanned for miles on end. As they flew past, they saw a large town. They could see people walking past, some men with bare chests and others with animal fur covering their chests. They flew lower and were able to see the busy town, filled with some females with tall men. The dragon landed in front of the town. Ariella wasn't ready for the blast of colorful auras and had to cover her eyes with her lace blindfold, or she will be confused and plagued by headaches. "Welcome to Dacron Kingdom." Hunter, who had changed back to his human form, and introduced them to the city. As they were helped down, some women in town looked over, with a bright smile as they saw another group of women. Around here they were treated very well. This was evident by their healthy skins and smiling eyes. "This town is built for women. You can run a business if you want, and this is where you will be staying before you pick triad husbands or you are compatible with the noble's aura," Damien explained along as they were guarded toward the square. The ladies' ears were focused on what he was saying, while their eyes took in the town, which was 10 times larger than their kingdom from the sky-high view they saw of it. They watched some females being surrounded by 3 men, and watched them be guarded and cared for gently as they mounted a horse. Even some pregnant women are followed by their husbands and buy everything the wife wants, and even hold her gently as they walk, and their worldview shifted. In their kingdom, women were only useful when they could be married off, for connection, or bear an heir. So seeing the treatment of these women here, they were shocked and filled with disbelief. Ariella moved forward with Mary's help, with Mary whispering excitedly of everything she had seen. "Oh my, it's like a fantasy land for women here. I just saw a woman call out to her husband to carry what they purchased." They stopped in front of a large square, and a woman walked forward. She was young but had an old wisdom about the way she moved. Granny Ruth, the brides are here. Damien addressed the young woman respectfully. Don't let her young face deceive you. She was over 100 years of age, one of the first brides to be married to dragons. But the ladies were unaware of this and felt the form of address was strange. My lovely children, welcome. I hope the journey here wasn't rough or terrifying for you. I know these boys could be a brute in taking care of ladies. The woman said in a soothing, gentle tone, but commanded respect. The women gathered had a feeling they were talking to an older person, but her young face confused them, but none of them dared show any disrespect. You all be given a drawing box to pick out your temporary home. Food and water would be served by the young dragons. Each of you would be given a young triad to help you with chores or other things till you marry and want to let them go. As her words echoed through the crowd of ladies, a wooden box was brought to the middle of the square, where they would randomly pick. Sounds of footsteps moved accordingly to the box, each woman dipping her hands inside, pulling out a wooden card written with numbers. Ariella tapped on the ground as she moved to the box. Her can hit the box, and she stopped. Ruth looked at the beautiful blind girl, feeling pity for the child, and made up her mind to take extra care of her before she was handed over to her husband's. Ariella, unaware of such thoughts, picked up a wood card and moved away for the next person. Some women, noticing her blindness, felt relieved. If not for this flaw, her beauty might have outshone their own. Even Selena felt relieved in her heart. When they were done picking, they heard footsteps coming closer and looked to the side to see teenage boys coming towards them. They moved in threes and stopped in front of them. Brides, these are your helpers. If you need anything from me, you can tell them to contact me. Ruth explained, seeing their confusion. She motioned for the boys to move forward, and some bold women picked the boys that caught their eyes. Ariella finally removed her blindfold, already used to the aura colors. She faced the auras of the young boy's aura and picked the ones with a gentle glow around them. Do you want to serve me? Ariella asked calmly, making sure they were aware of her loss of sight. 3 of them looked at the gentle, beautiful woman in front of them, whose eyes were without light, and shared a gaze before nodding, but remembering she couldn't see, the one in the middle answered for them. We are willing. My name is Aiden. This is my triad, Kallian and Asher. He introduced with a lively, youthful voice, making Ariella's expression soften a bit. Miss, let me see your card so I can take you to your new home. Kallian chimed in, and Ariella moved her hands towards him. My name is Ariella. Ariella gave her name. Miss Ariella, let's take you to your house. Asher chimed in, quieter than the other 2. They guided her, with Aiden explaining everything along the way. This town is called the Sunflower Town, one of the 92 towns spread across the kingdom. The towering mountains scattered around are where the triads live with their wives. The town is mainly business and gatherings for ladies. Asher paused, and Kallian continued. You can ask for a shop if you want to start a business, and there are many things you can buy in town as well. Ariella listened with interest and couldn't help but ask, Are we the only group of brides? No, there are many others spread across the towns, Asher answered as they reached Ariella's new home. She was fortunate to get a bungalow surrounded by flowers and a little removed from the town's noise. Though she could not see the building, she sensed the colors of the flowers' auras surrounding her, and the floral scent made her feel instantly at peace. The 3 of them watched Ariella's expression soften as she ran her fingers through the flowers. Their earlier thoughts of cutting them disappeared. She seems to like flowers, they thought, bearing that in mind. Miss Ariella, please have a seat. We want to clean up the house, Aiden said, helping her to a boulder to sit on. Okay, can you do me a favor? Could you plant some flowers that will grow into vines around the walls, and add some flowers inside? Ariella asked gently, turning her face toward them. I know a flower like that. I can go get it, Asher offered, remembering the vine-like flowers he had seen during training. Thank you. And you can all call me Ella. Ariella is a mouthful. She felt grateful for their help and patience throughout their way here. She planned to bake them flower pastries or cake later to thank them. Aiden and the others quickly cleaned up the house, while Asher dashed toward the forest in search of the vines and flowers. As Ariella waited, a woman arrived. Ariella heard her footsteps and turned in the direction of the sound, seeing the woman's green aura. She was about to stand. "Dear, no need to get up. I just came to hand over the monthly allowance given to all the brides," Ruth spoke softly, moving closer to her with a kind gaze. "Every weekend, brides go to the courting grounds, where you mingle with the triads and who you are compatible with, both in energy waves and emotionally." Ruth paused when she saw Ariella's confusion. She sat beside her on the boulder facing her. "Do you know I'm far older than I sound? Can you guess my age?" Ruth asked, waiting for Ariella's reply. "I feel you are in your 60s from the way you speak." Ariella guessed, but in an unsure tone. "Wrong, dear. I'm 185 years old," Ruth said, causing Ariella to suck in cold breath. "Pardon me, may I feel your face?" she asked politely, nearly making Ruth smile at her disbelieving expression. "Sure you can," Ruth replied, her tone mixed with smiles as she leaned closer to Ariella's outstretched hands. Ariella's fingers traced Ruth's face gently, finding smooth, healthy skin rather than wrinkles, and she couldn't help but believe Ruth's words. Knowing Ruth won't gain anything from speaking false. She removed her hands. Her face regained its calmness, though her heart was still shocked. "Dear, how would you like me to address you?" Ruth asked. Her tone didn't sound impatient at Ariella's actions. Instead, she felt a motherly feeling towards this child. Remembering her sons, Ruth felt a slight sadness and regret. "Now, Ariella, listen carefully to what I have to say." Ruth's voice turned serious. Ariella's ears perked up, paying close attention. "There is something called an energy bond. It happens when you can accept a triad soul connection seamlessly. It can be tested with the triad soul crystals." Ruth paused, ensuring Ariella followed. "You might be unfamiliar with the triad system. Let me explain it to you. You know the dragons always move in groups of 3. From an early stage, they find other dragons with whom they can bond beyond the level of siblings. They can communicate seamlessly in battles, training, and other aspects of life, but I won't bore you with all the details." Ruth said as she stood to leave. "Thank you for explaining all this. When I make a scented balm, I will send one of the boys to bring it to you," Ariella said with a grateful tone, placing the woman's kindness in her heart. "There is no need to go through the trouble, dear. Here's the allowance." Ruth dropped a porch filled with gold coins beside her. "It's 500 gold coins given to you. Don't pity the boys and send them to help when you need it. I will be taking my leave." Ruth said, and was about to leave when she stopped. "Before I forget, there is a class distinction here. The 92 towns are for the commoners, and the remaining 50 towns are for the nobles. Be careful around the women." Ruth's final words were spoken seriously before she left. Ariella watched her disappearing aura, closing her eyes to absorb everything she had heard. She gripped her cane firmly, and releasing her grip, she let out a sigh. She could hear the last warning in Ruth's words. "I just have to mind my business and live peacefully away from the noble women." With that thought, her mind regained its calm. "Miss Ella, the house is clean. Let me help you inside," Aidan called from afar, approaching gently so as not to startle her. "All right," Ruth responded as she grasped the porch in her hands and stood. Her stomach let out a growling sound. Kylian noticed. "Miss, what would you like for lunch?" Kylan asked, his tone apologetic for not preparing food sooner after her long journey. "Are you the one cooking?" Ariella asked, inwardly surprised. Ariella had thought she would be the one cooking. "Yes, Miss Ella. We have been trained to serve the brides in every way, and I'm the best cook among my triad," Kylian said, his tone filled with pride in his last sentence. "All right, cook your best meal. Add enough chili," Ariella answered in a light tone. "Miss Ella, you can chew on this while you wait for the food to be ready. I got this fruit when I was cutting the vine flower." Asher chimed, holding a bunch of purple grapes on his hands. Seeing Ariella's outstretched hands, he placed them gently on her fingers. "I don't know the name of the fruit, but it's sweet and not poisonous," Asher explained, seeing her hands feeling around the fruits. "These are called grapes. Thank you for picking them up. If you see any other fruits that are not poisonous, bring them to me, and I will make a dessert for the 3 of you." Ariella said, feeling inwardly surprised to see fruits again. Because of the abyssal beasts, humans were fearful to go into the forest, so things like fruits are rare if forgotten by them. She pulled one and put it into her mouth. As she chewed on it, a burst of sweet juice burst into her tongue. Her face was a mask of enjoyment as she ate more. The others saw her like this and planned in their mind to get those fruits lying carelessly in the forest. No one eats them at times. Even other brides had grown tired of eating them. Ariella entered the house. She could see the green aura adorning some places in the wall, and her heart grew warm at them doing what she asked of them. Some people might nod at her words and not do a thing, thinking she was blind and wouldn't find out. She had been through those situations countless times. Her cane tapped on the ground as she moved around the house with the help of Aiden. Her hands felt around the walls of the house, taking every detail she could get from her hands. The house was a large, cozy cottage with enough room for her use. The out area was wildflowers of different colors, bringing a weird sense of beauty. Ariella sat on the chair as she waited for her food. Then she remembered her luggage, and as if it heard her, it was dropped off by the dragon that carried them to their journey here. She wondered how he knew it was hers, but asked Asher instead. How did he know which luggage was mine? The tone was surprised. She could see the flower's steam aura, and she braided into the handles. Asher assumed she was afraid it wasn't hers. We dragons have a good sense of smell. Don't worry, these bags are yours, he said, trying to calm her fears as he brought the bags towards her, placing them on the ground. He made a noise to show his actions, which was unnecessary for Ariella, but she appreciated his thoughtfulness. Opening the bag, her hands rummaged through her things, and she brought out equipment for her balm, soap, and essential oil making. Asher's face held questions, not knowing what the little mortar, clay spoon, and others were used for. When the three of you pick your rooms, help me place all this in a well-lit and ventilated room, Ariella instructed. As she held her bags of clothes, she moved with her cane and climbed the wooden stairs. Asher rushed to her to help her take the bags and guide her up, but she waved him off. I can carry this, am not that useless, she said in a light-hearted tone, showing she was not set in any way because of her eyes. She missed seeing things clearly, but she would not trade her auras and other heightened senses for anything, and she had seen enough in her last life. Asher paused at her words but followed her to stop any accident in time. Aiden was in charge of planting the vane flowers around the house while Kallian was busy in the kitchen, standing in front of a cauldron which was placed on top of an open hearth. He turned the boiling stew in the cauldron with a wooden spoon, while the brick oven was baking bread. The house settled into a rhythm where everyone had their things to do. Meanwhile, far across the kingdom, atop a towering mountain nestled within a dense forest, where the trees stood so tall that sunlight barely pierced through, and dangerous beasts prowled the forest. Inside the mountain, a large crystal-like cave housed 3 sleeping dragons. They were in a dead-like sleep, their colorful gold scales shimmering from the crystal light on them. Suddenly, they stirred as if sensing something. Their eyes snapped open in unison, and the moment they awakened, every dragon felt it, even the kings. After all, these were their ancestors, the very first origin of the dragon triad. They all looked in one direction, their body reacting to bow in that direction, which some lower dragons did. The dragon lords showed their respect, each wondering what woke them from their millennial sleep. Suddenly, the dragon realm held a sense of tension. The kings were scared but respectful, wondering if anyone had angered them or entered their dwelling. The last dragons that tried that were killed instantly by only the dragon breath oozing from their bodies. Ariella noticed the Kallian and the rest's strange behavior, but she didn't ask and scooped out a stew and tasted it. She moaned under her breath by the delicious and spicy taste of the stew. She tore a piece of wheat bread and ate it together. Her head nodded in approval at the soft texture of the bread, and it blended so perfectly with the stew. When she was almost done with her meal, the 3 of them came back to the present, but their emotions were filled with awe and fear. These were the ancestors they had heard about since childhood, yet no one had ever truly described them. And yet, They didn't need to be told. They could feel it deep in their souls. The anticipation burned within them. They couldn't wait to see them. Kalyan then noticed Ariella's satisfied expression at his food, and a surge of joy filled him. "Thank you for the meal. It was delightful," Ariella said, complimenting Kalyan's cooking as she stood up. "I will retire. Good night," she added, even though the sun had just gone down. "Good night, Miss Ella. If you need anything, call out. We will always hear you," Kalyan replied, understanding her need for rest after the long journey. The rest wished her good night. Ariella nodded, and the tapping of her cane faded as she left their presence. Upstairs in her room, she moved towards the bed with the help of the flowers she had placed on the dressing table. A yawn broke from her lips, tears gathering at the corner of her eyes as she blinked against the heavy pull of sleep. She promised herself to bathe tomorrow as she slid into the covers, and as soon as her head touched the pillow, she drifted. In a distant, mysterious cave, the dragons shifted into their human forms. The tall, broad-shouldered men stood with their golden eyes staring at each other. "You have not changed, brothers, looking handsome as ever." The one with the black hair tipped with striking blue said playfully, looking at his brothers. "The three of them are triplets that formed a triad. They looked alike, with their color-tipped hair distinguishing them. I want to go back to sleep." The white-tipped-haired one muttered between yawns, his eyes half closed. "Xavier, Jasper, you shouldn't be concerned about it, but why we woke up or what woke us up," Leo said. His serious tone woke them up, and their face shifted. Xavier dropped his playful tone, and Jasper opened his sleepy eyes. Leo is the leader of their triad, with black hair and a Greek sculpture face that had a permanent seriousness to it. But that didn't mar his handsomeness one bit. He looked at his brothers feeling helpless, wondering after so many years. None of them had changed. Forgetting him also didn't even change. It might be our bride is finally here. My face, I hope it's as handsome as always. Xavier said, touching his face and looking through the crystal reflection of himself. Holding his chest dramatically at his unchanged, handsome face, his fingers went through his shoulder-length hair, striking a nosebleed-inducing pose. Leo's eyebrows twitched as he watched Xavier's actions. He turned his head away to see Jasper sleepwalking towards his cave room to sleep. Their serious expression didn't even last for a whole minute. "Enough," Leo growled. "Let's duel. I want to see if you two have lost your edge." He grabbed both brothers before they could react, dragging them out of the cave. "No, I don't want to," Xavier shouted, fearfully covering his face. Whenever he fights with his brother, Leo always targets his face. He doesn't want to look like a pig's head. Jasper was too lazy to struggle out of Leo's hold. His face had a painful expression, envisioning the pain ahead. Leo ignored their feelings, and Xavier struggled and threw them down from the sky-high mountain. Jasper and Xavier fell freely, the wind beating at their face, their hair blown upward. The wind was so strong as they kept falling to the ground below. Before they could hit the ground, they transformed midair into their dragon forms. They let out a roar which shook the whole dragon realm. Their golden scales glowed in the moonlight. They were 3 times more enormous than normal dragons, their wings beating in the air as they faced the other gold-scaled dragon in front of them. Xavier and Jasper looked at each other. "Let's encircle him. Don't give him a moment to breathe." Xavier communicated through their minds. Jasper felt his brother was overestimating their strength to bring down Big Brother. He just beat his wings in response, not having the energy to explain his reasons to Xavier, and followed along with the plan, but mentally prepared for pain at the end of their fight. "Ready?" Leo roared in their minds, a roar leaving his mouth as he flew towards them, his claws gleaming dangerously under the dark sky. A clash of metal sliding on a flash echoed through the sky as Xavier roared out in pain. He opened his mouth, gathered his dragon's breath, and spit out blue fire straight for Leo's body. The attack was stopped by Leo's black fire. It overcame Xavier's blue one and hit him squarely on the body, scorching his skin severely, but the fire didn't extinguish and kept on burning, making Xavier roll in the sky to turn it off. Jasper could not watch his brother's pathetic form anymore and blew a mild white fire on Xavier. The strange thing was the fire didn't burn him but stopped the black fire and healed up his bleeding wounds. "I survived," Xavier screamed out, grateful to Jasper and their mind link. Leo snorted at them when he heard Xavier's words. He dashed towards them in speed, his scales turned sharp as he slammed his spiked tail towards Jasper, while his claws slashed at Xavier's left wing, tearing a big gash on it. Jasper was sent flying backward, deep gashes torn into his sides as blood gushed from the wounds. Before he could retaliate, another devastating blow struck him with full force, slamming him into the ground. The impact echoed like thunder, shaking the earth and carving a massive crater beneath him. Xavier was not fairly better. His left wings were torn, and he could only fly loosely in the sky. Next, Leo's claws went for his face, creating a big gash. "Not the face," Xavier screamed as he fell to the ground below, falling exactly on top of Jasper. Leo hovered in the sky for a second before he flew to the ground below. Reaching the ground, he transformed back to his human form. "It seems both of you have lost your touch. Starting tomorrow, we'll train," Leo stated in a serious tone, forgetting his strengths were on a perverted level and that both of them had tired for surviving attacks from him. His mind was focused on the abyssal beasts. What humans fought were the lower level of abyssal beasts, not the behemoths of beasts. The dragons are, in a way, a guardian to humans, or they would have been wiped out long ago. "No, not training." Xavier's tone was filled with tears. Even Jasper's expression collapsed at the thought of the hellish training under his brother's hands. Leo ignored their pain and focused on a training plan for them. Ariella frowned in her sleep from the roars. Her eyes opened groggily for a second, before closing. She fell back to sleep, feeling the commotion was not beside her. Only the dragons were awake, staring fearfully and curiously in the direction of the sound. They wanted to watch their battle and learn something, but dared not. Leo called for a second round. Xavier's painful roars filled the sky, while Jasper's bleeding body healed only to be torn open again and again. As dawn came, Leo had his fill of imparting wisdom and fighting lessons to them. They went back to their cave, and after transforming to their human form, they were all filled with blue and black bruises. Their wheat skin had claw marks, and Xavier's face was swollen and yellow. Jasper's wounds healed quicker, since his fire had a healing nature. He ignored both of them and walked towards his cave to sleep. Leo kept in mind to wake him up later, or he would sleep like he was in a comatose state. He knew his brother's sleeping, lazy nature was not going to go away soon. Xavier walked towards the water pool in the cave, holding the wall as he walked. All his bones were bruised and dislocated. Why does Leo get such sick pleasure from torturing us under the excuse of training? It has always been like this since they could remember. He thought bitterly as he walked into the spring. A sigh of pleasure left his lips as the warm water massaged his bones. He floated for a while, his playful demeanor shifting as he thought about what really woke them from sleep. He could be all fun, but inwardly his heart was cold. It was a front to deceive people that he was the easiest of his brothers to talk to. He closed his eyes, his ears heightened as he listened into the night. His listening scope covered the whole kingdom. He could pick up on every little sound of the night, the chirping of insects, the hooves of horses, the swinging of doors, and whispers of lovers. Everything was laid before him, nothing could hide before his ears. Finding nothing of importance, he was about to retract his senses when he felt the sound of a particular beating heart. Nothing was special about it after hearing others, but for some reason that sound made his heart feel lighter. He frowned, confused by this feeling, and quickly retracted his senses. His brows raised in interest as he pushed his wet hair away from his face. His long lashes held droplets of water sliding down his well-defined, healed face. He let out a deep breath, covering the bath in mist and instantly heating the water. The morning sun shines into the room, the forest coming alive, with birds chirping and animals waking up. Ariella turned in the bed. Her eyelids trembled, her eyes opening slowly. She took deep breaths. She sat up, her hair cascading loosely on her shoulders. A yawn left her lips as she rubbed her face before she felt around for her cane beside her bed. She grasped it and came down from the bed. Opening up her bag, she brought out her workout clothes, an all-black pants and top which a pad was sewn into. Putting on her clothes, she tied her hair backwards and left the room. As she walked down the stairs, she could hear sounds of activity, indicating that Callian and the rest were already up. Their eyes glanced toward the stairs when they heard the sound of her cane tapping on the ground. "Good morning, Miss Ella." Aidan was the first to greet, the other echoing along. "Good morning," she replied, stepping outside under their gaze. Asher followed her silently to guard her. Ariella heard the sounds of his footsteps, no matter how soundless he was trying to make them be. She stopped in the clearing, surrounded by flowers. She paused and took deep breaths, taking its flora smell into her lungs, and her mind calmed. Then she moved. She swung her cane skillfully in the air, and her body flowed gracefully, like a sound of peaceful chime. But the force generated from her swings was deadly. Asher watched and felt the deadly force surrounding her swings. He was shocked in his heart at her skillful, swift movements. He could only stand and watch her swing her cane like a sharp sword. His heart was filled with awe as he watched her graceful movements. After a while she stopped. Sweat slid down her chin, her hair sticking to her neck. Her heart pounded from the exercise, but her mind became clearer. She held the cane normally and used it to find her way back to the house. "Please get my bath ready." She turned accurately to Asher's hiding place and requested. "Yes, miss." Asher's tone shook with surprise that she could find his whereabouts, and at this moment she stopped looking at her as a weak woman. Her skills and vigilance spoke volumes to him. He smiled, keeping in mind to practice more, and hid his breath away from her notice. He walked into the house and prepared her bath. Going to the well at the back of the house, he drew some water and heated it. "Miss Ella, it's ready," he called out to her, and left her some privacy when he heard her coming footsteps. She took her toiletries with her and walked towards the room, with the flower's help and her cane to feel the way. Her hands felt the door along the door until she found a latch. She closed it and carefully removed her clothes. Dropping her cane, she held the bathtub and climbed cautiously into the water. She let out a comfortable sigh when the warm water touched her, and her hands glided into the water, playing with it. Scooping some into her hands and brought it to her face, where she saw the blue aura surrounding it. Every living thing had an aura, only man-made things that were dead objects that she could not see through. Her dime icy blue eyes looked vacantly at the blue light before pouring it over her face. She stopped dazing out and had her bath, which was relaxing. "I wonder how Mary is faring. I will check on her later." She thought about her friend as she got out of her bath. Fully dressed, Ariella went to the dining area, already smelling breakfast in the air, the scent of fresh bread wafting from the oven. She moved to the table. Dragging the chair back, she sat. Aidan and Asher were already seated, and they were glad that Ariella did not mind their presence at the table. The bread was placed in the center, along with dried bacon, eggs, and water. Callian made sure to serve her first, sliding her plate closer before he and the others began taking their portions. Ariella tore a piece of bread and chewed slowly, her mind filling with thoughts of what she needed to do today. "First, I will make some scented soap and balm and send it to Granny Ruth, then make some little snacks." She loved munching on little things like cookies and the rest. She was not given enough opportunity back in the Duke's house. Now, with a place of her own, she could make anything she liked. A smile bloomed on her lips at the thought. The rest fell into a brief daze at the sight of her genuine smile lighting up her face. Embarrassed, they blushed and quickly looked down at their food. "Asher, bring me those grapes and another sweetened fruit. Is beeswax expensive here?" Ariella asked, wanting to know the price of wax. It was extremely expensive back in the human kingdom due to its rareness, so she had to resort to tallow. "What's a beeswax? We only get their honey," Callian replied, sounding curious. Ariella's hand, reaching for the water, paused. Her fingers trembled slightly with excitement. "Don't you need candles to see in the dark?" she asked, knowing the honeycombs of the bees were extremely useful. "Candle? We use glowing stones when it turns dark." Asher exchanged looks with his triad, and they also spotted a confused expression on the mention of candle. "Are there still some honeycombs that have not been thrown away? Bring it to me, I need them." Ariella's tone was urgent and excited about how she could make her scented soaps and balm at a lower cost. All right, I will get some from Granny Ruth, Aiden answered. And do they sell essential oils in town? Ariella asked with a hopeful tone, wanting to avoid the trouble of making oils from scratch. They are sold. Which ones do you need? Kalen answered, recalling a shop he had passed that sold various scents. Get me lavender, tea tree, peppermint, jasmine, and sandalwood, she listed, and Kalen nodded along with her words, then remembered she could not see him nodding. Will do. Is there anything else you want to buy? We will soon head out for training, Callian asked, being they had to go for their training. Ariella was silent for a while, ticking a mental note in her mind, and found she didn't need anything else at this moment. Just buy these items for now, Ariella said with a hum under her breath. After the discussion over the breakfast table, they all scattered to go do what was asked of them. Ariella brought her money pouch. The gold coin made a chime sound as she opened it up. How much do you need? Ariella asked Kalen in front of her. She was not aware of the purchasing process over here. 20 gold coins would do, Callian uttered after thinking for a bit. Some of the things I would buy might only be in silver coins. 1 gold coin is equal 100 silver coins. Kalen went further and explained it to her. All right, help me buy some flour and eggs in case there is some amount left, Ariella requested, handing over 21 gold coins to him. Killian took the money and left, and Asher planted the vine flowers around the house. Aiden was helping her tidy up her workroom. Place the mortar over there, wrap a vine flower around it, Ariella instructed him from the side. She brought out the leather wrap on the table and some jars filled with oil as well. The room was filled with sounds of items being placed or moved. After an hour, they were done setting everything up. Ariella stretched and went to the kitchen, her cane feeling the way for her. At this moment, she missed her dog. Reaching the kitchen, "Is there any flour and eggs left?" she asked Aiden, who seems to always follow her around. "There's some in the cupboard. Wait, let me get them out," Aiden said, and he opened the cupboard, bringing out the flour and eggs left. "Bring milk if there's some," Ariella added, looking in his direction. She could see his aura move, but could see the things he carried in his arms. He laid them on the table beside the heart. "Everything is here. Instruct me on what to do. You don't need to do it yourself," Aiden said kindly. He looked at her, waiting for her reply. Ariella's hand holding the cane relaxed a bit at his words. She has not gotten used to her surroundings yet, and it is quite a challenge to navigate through. "All right, follow my instructions. Bring out some honey or sugar." Ariella gave in and said. She waited for him to bring it out before continuing. "Heat the oven. Bring out a large bowl." Ariella paused, then continued when he hit up the oven and placed a bowl on the table. "Now crack 3 eggs into the eggs and add 3 cups of milk. Mix it together." Ariella watched his aura movements. Aiden mixed the egg and the milk and thought she wanted to bake bread, but her next instructions told him otherwise. "Add the 4 cups of flour, little by little, until it is all in. Mix it, still it's smooth and thick." Ariella instructed and waited for a bit. She called out and stretched her hands for the spoon. She slid her fingers over the spoon and felt the texture between her fingers. "Good. Now add 2 cups of honey, a pinch of salt, and cinnamon if there are any." Ariella's tone was filled with approval, pleased with his progress. Once he had added everything, she instructed him to grease a baking dish lightly with oil and pour in the batter. Aiden followed her directions with a curious expression, wondering what they were making. Ariella tapped the dish gently to settle the batter evenly, then motioned for him to place it in the oven. Now, they just had to wait for it to bake. In a clearing, young triads faced one another in battle, their expressions serious as they went at each other. Sounds of flesh slamming on the ground and breaking bones echoed through the clearing. Some drew blood from their opponents. Their training was brutal and gruesome. 2 instructors stood in front and watched them, pointing out some of their mistakes. "Defend from here. Don't leave an opening for the enemy to exploit," the man instructed, patting heavily on their backs to correct their stance. Leo strolled in unannounced, hiding his breath from everyone as he watched silently, nodding his head in approval. It seems when they were away, they did not slack off in teaching the young ones. He thought as he watched them. Satisfied with their training, he was about to turn away when a breeze carried a scent to him. He froze, closing his eyes as he smelt that flora scent. His heart surged with lightness and peace at the scent. Getting a hold of himself, he shook his head to clear his mind. Running a hand through his hair, he was filled with confused emotions at the strange feeling. He tried to sniff the air, but he couldn't get the scent, so he walked soundlessly out of the clearing, with no one aware of his presence or absence. He changed into his dragon form and flew high into the clouds, moving towards the king's castle. It was time to meet those children. He flew with speed invisible to the human eyes, and within a minute, which could have been a 3-day flight, he hovered in front of an enormous stone-built castle built into a tall rocky mountain. He let out a roar to signify his arrival before he changed into his human form and wore a pant, leaving his chest bare. The kings, caught up in their duties, froze and hurried to the castle entrance. Together with all the high-ranking nobles, the king's 2 sisters, brothers and the king's mothers all moved quickly to welcome him. They stood, their body tensed and anxious as they watched a tall figure coming closer, his long black hair cascading on his back. As he drew closer, the dragon in them wanted to bow. The weaker ones fell to the knees, while the kings barely held themselves from bowing as well. "Greetings, your esteemed lord," they bowed respectfully. The young female blushed as they stole glances at the young ancestor they always heard about in the story. They looked at him from the corner of their eyes and looked away immediately. To them, it was like a folklore coming to reality. "Rise. I see you're well." Leo's cold expression remained the same, and he scrutinized the kings. "Let's spar. I need to see you are keeping up on your training as you've promised the past kings before you." Leo didn't recognize this young kings and knew the old ones had been changed. His first concern was whether they had the strength to rule over the kingdom and hold back the abyssal behemoths from breaking through the human realm. The kings exchanged glances between each other and could read the fear in their eyes. They swallowed hard and could only nod to his demands. Leo did not pay attention to the rest, only to the kings. "Esteemed lord, please come in and have a cup of tea." Weakened, the older woman's lips closed at the expressionless glance on her. She broke out in a cold sweat. She was so used to the power of men catering to her words and respectful behaviors, forgetting she was but a mere ant before such monster. A glance reminded her of that. The other women saw this and kept quiet, fading to the background. The dragon lords had been sweating buckets in Leo's formidable dragon's breath and wisely said nothing. They watched the kings change into their forms and dash to the sky with Leo following along in his dragon form. The loud beating of wings echoed through the sky. 3 black dragons circled a gold one. They communicated. "Flank him. Attack his right. Logan, read his left. Attack with all your strength. Don't reserve any. Attack." Caden ordered and roared as he dashed towards the middle, as the others attacked through the left and right. Leo did not move and watched their actions with a piercing feline gaze. They attacked at once, one digging his claws through the gold dragon's wings. But his claws could not pierce through the scale. Instead, a metal clashing on metal rang out as sparks flew into the air. Reed was lost for a moment, and Leo took that chance and whipped its barred tail towards him, knocking him instantly from the sky. "Never lose your attention in battle," Leo instructed, his words crashing into Reed's mind as he fell below. Caden's sharp fangs went for Leo's neck but met the same fate, but he slammed on Leo's body to push him down, with Logan creeping under him to attack his fleshy stomach. Leo reacted immediately, and his hinge legs hit forcefully on Logan's head, causing him to be disoriented, and he was kicked below by the force. The wind flapped into his ears as he fell through and slammed heavily into the ground, causing a huge dent in the rocky ground. Caden followed as well. The ground trembled by the sound, and the spectators winched in their hearts for their kings, but there was nothing they could do to help. Leo hovered in the sky and looked below at the fallen kings. "Don't tell me you are done. Get up, we are far from over." He roared in the sky, the shockwave pushing the people below backwards. The young ladies stared at the mighty figure in the sky, and their hearts grew with strange thoughts they were not supposed to have. "I want him as my husband." These words rang in their mind. The kings got up, and another round of beating sound echoed. They fought, if you could call it a one-sided beating, and the afternoon sun went up the sky before Leo had pity on them and released them. I am glad you kept to your training, but it is far from over. I will come once a month to spar with you. Their skin tingled at his words, and their scalp numbed. They didn't want to face him again in their life. Their bodies were aching, and some of their bones were either dislocated or broken. They had to stand, or their faces would be lost in front of their people. Leo flew away after stating his decision, unbothered if they were willing or not. The ladies looked with regret at his leaving form and turned and caught similar expressions on their faces. They nodded to each other with a normal expression on the surface, while their minds stirred with thoughts. Days went by, and soon it was time for the courting party, where all the brides would gather. The town buzzed with activity as the new brides shopped for clothes and accessories for tomorrow. The sounds of horse hooves thundered on the ground, and coins clinked as they dropped onto the counters, echoing throughout the market. But on a secluded end, in a house covered in vine flowers, there was quietness, as if no bride was living there, though one was. Ariella buried her head into the pillow as she slept, and then her eyes opened. She sat up quickly, remembering she was heading into the forest with Asher and the others today. With a sigh, she realized she was already late. Her hands played with the golden sunlit particles surrounding her as she got out of bed. After changing into her training clothes, she went outside to do her exercise. When she finished, Callian informed her, "Miss Ella, there is a bath drawn for you." Before heading to the kitchen to prepare breakfast and pancakes she would eat in the forest. Ariella hummed in acknowledgement and went upstairs to gather her toiletries. After bathing and eating, they set out with baskets in hand. Her house was just a 10-minute walk into the forest. She wore long pants and sleeves, with a lace blindfold wrapped around her wrist, in case the auras became overwhelming. They guided and guarded her well into the forest. Ariella paused in her steps when she saw beautiful aura colors surrounding her. She could hear the chirps of insects and birds, and feel the particles of sunlight shining through trees with the smell of moist earth and wood. They waited patiently for her, seeing her expression was happy and relaxed. "We will only be searching in the outer area of the forest. It's more dangerous deeper in," Aiden said as he broke a branch blocking her path. Ariella listened, curiosity piqued about what was in the deeper areas that a dragon could deem dangerous. "What kind of beasts are in the deeper areas?" she asked, touching the bark of a tree. "They are wild, untamed beasts that roam freely, along with other supernatural creatures like dryads, fairies, and other mystical beings." Asher replied, his voice dropping to a whisper as if afraid the creatures might overhear. Ariella's brows raised, feeling what he said sounded gibberish, but given that dragons existed, why wouldn't other supernatural beings exist as well? "So, the forest is enormous then, for all these creatures to have found a home here," Ariella mused, though the others heard her. "No dragon has ever reached the end of the forest on foot, only by flying over it," Aiden added as they walked. "We can find what we need here in the outer areas." "Stop," Ariella called, spotting a familiar plant aura, sugarcane. Her heart surged with excitement at the thought of making sugar, sparing her from having to use honey to sweeten everything. "Help me get every single stalk of sugarcane," she said, her voice trembling with anticipation. "Isn't this the sweet cane?" Callian asked after hearing her call it sugarcane. She caught on to the local name and nodded in confirmation, prompting them to pick the stalks. "It's sweet, but it's hard to chew on." "I can find you some other sweet fruit," Asher suggested, being females don't eat such hard fruits. "I'm going to use it to make sugar. Just help me pick them." "You will see the result later," Ariella explained as she urged them to pick. It seems they would finally see the sugar she always spoke about. They thought as they broke the long sticks into small pieces to fit into the basket. They moved forward when they were done picking, and chance upon wild chickens, which Aiden caught. Their basket was filled with fruits and other strange plants and flowers Ariella asked them to pick up. Stopping beside a yellow fruit, their teeth ached as they remembered its sourness. "Miss Ella, this fruit is very sour. It's not for consumption." Kallian said, trying to stop her from picking the lemons, the name she gave this fruit. Don't worry, Pick. They are for cooking and other things. I won't eat them plainly, she said in a light tone, not changing her mind about it. Okay, they answered, already used to her weird way of picking strange plants or fruits, putting it into the basket which had filled to the brim. Let's head back. We will come next time, Ariella said as she patted her thighs. She was already feeling tired and was already satisfied with their haul, especially the sugar canes. Her mind drifted to thoughts of extracting sugar, grateful for the knowledge she had gained in her previous life, particularly her love for food production. Lost in her thoughts, she was jolted when a white blur darted in front of her. Aiden reacted swiftly, grabbing it, and she heard the low, pained whine of a creature. She turned to Aiden's hands and saw a green moving small creature. Red blood was dripping from it, and she knew the beast was injured. Miss Ella, it's a small, injured white tiger. I'm sorry it startled you, Aiden said in a guilty tone, that they didn't notice the beast before it sprang on her. Don't press hard on the wounds. Bring it closer. Let me feel it. Ariella's fast-beating heart had calmed down. She only wanted to touch the beast furs. Aiden moved closer but didn't put it in her hands. You can feel it while I hold it, Aiden said firmly as the rest gathered and looked at the beast vigilantly. Any slight move from it, and its neck would be broken in two. Sensing he was not going to change his mind, she said nothing and stretched her hands towards the beast, who let out a painful and fearful whine from its mouth. There, she soothed in a gentle tone, making soft shushing sounds as she stroked its soft fur. Her eyes lit up at the warmth and softness of the fur between her hands, and the beast settled down, feeling comfortable in her presence and touch. Do you want to go back with me? She asked the beast in a gentle tone, and it growled softly in response, which brought a smile upon her lips. That was how they had a new member in their midst. They returned to the house with the injured cat in Aiden's hands. She quickly went to her box, pulling out a balm made for injuries and a strip of clothes to wrap the wound up. Place the little one on the table, she instructed Aiden, as she placed what she needed on the table. Asher, get me a bowl of clean water with a piece of cloth, she said as she ran her hands through the beast's fur, with Kallian watching cautiously from the side. Yes, miss, Asher called out to make it known that he heard her. He quickly went outside with a bowl, drawing some water from the well and bringing with him some strips of clean clothes. He placed it on the table, and she wet the clothes in the water, squeezing out excess water, and began cleaning the cat carefully. Her hands felt for his wounds and felt it was a shallow wound that bled a lot, so she became confident in her balm treatment. Thank God she didn't have to sew the wound close, that is, if she still knew how to do it in her current body. She thought as she cleaned the cat thoroughly, wetting the clothes back and forth. When she was done rubbing the balm and wrapping the wound, she sat tiredly on the chair, her stomach growling from hunger. Then she remembered she picked up some potatoes while in the forest. Can you bake some potatoes while making pasta for me? Ariella asked before Kallian could ask her what she wanted to eat for lunch. Kallian said with a difficult expression, Miss, what is pasta? He was clueless about this word. Ariella's stroking fingers paused for a bit before continuing to stroke the tiger's fur. She kept forgetting she was in a fantasy medieval land where some modern things and food are unknown. She sighed, then smiled, feeling a bit of excitement at the thought of making food from scratch. All right, I will teach you how to make it, she said as she clapped her hands, feeling excited as she got up from the chair and moved toward the kitchen. Aiden and Asher had a happy smile on their face, knowing they might get to eat a delicious meal, and after the cake she made, they had more confidence in whatever she wanted to make. Asher, go clean the wild chickens, Kallian called out from the kitchen. Okay, I'm going. He got a response from Asher and then turned to the sitting Ariella waiting for her instructions. First, get the flour and salt. Crush the salt into fine powder. I don't want any chunks, Ariella instructed, bringing a large wooden bowl closer to her with a spoon in hand. Kallian murmured to show he was listening. He brought out the salt in its solid form and crushed it into dust with a squeeze of his hands, Ariella saw the white particles of dust flowing out from his green hands and was happy for such strength. Now she had seen what to use to squeeze out juice from those sugar canes. She mused, "Pour all the flour into the bowl since everyone is eating." Ariella was too lazy to take measurements, and the boys had a huge appetite, so it was better to just pour everything. She sat and guided him from the side. "Add the salt. Your hand need to be clean for this step," she added seriously. Kalyan quickly washed his hands and began mixing the flour and salt evenly, creating a well in the center as instructed. He added water and began mixing until a firm dough was formed. "Miss, is it ready now?" Kalyan asked, wondering how they were going to eat it like this. "No, this is not the finishing look," Ariella said as she felt the dough and nodded internally in satisfaction at the desired dough form. "Now knead it until it becomes smooth and elastic," she said as Asher walked in with the chickens which had been cleaned. "Here's the chicken," Asher said as he walked to them. "Chop it into small chunks but not too small and place in a bowl," Ariella said as she focused her attention on Kalyan kneading with the background sound of a knife cutting on meat. "Miss, check it," Kalyan said after 2 minutes passed. Ariella stretched her hand towards it. She thought it needed an extra 8 minutes before it became elastic and smooth, but to her surprise, it was done in under 2 minutes in Kalyan hands. "It's fine now. It has to rest for a while as we make the broth for the pasta." She carried the heavy dough in her hand and placed it inside the bowl and covered it with a piece of clothing. Her hand felt numb from the weight, and she wondered what strength Kalyan had to knead this dough out so easily. Asher had left at some point. The meat was left neatly inside the bowl for them to use. For the chicken pasta stew, she handed him the vegetables needed for him to cut: onion, carrots, and celery stalk. She minced the garlic cloves. Kalyan saw she wanted to make fire, and he quickly stopped her. "Don't worry, you don't need to cook, just instruct me on the rest," Kalyan said as he controlled his dragon breath and blew fire on the woods, lighting them up immediately. "I won't injure myself, and I'm not that useless that I can't cook," Ariella said helplessly. She felt if she indulgenced them, she wouldn't know how to do simple things again. She moved closer to the cauldron and ordered in a firm tone, "Bring me the oil and meat." Kalyan heard her firm tone and knew she was adamant about cooking with, and he compromised after much internal struggle. He brought the things to her but watched her like a hawk. She seasoned the meat and brought it to a boil for some minutes, then asked Kalyan to remove it for her. In the same cauldron, she fried the diced vegetables for a bit and poured the chicken broth and some seasoning. As it simmered, a mouth-watering spicy aroma spread through the kitchen and out into the room, making Asher, Aiden, and the tiger swallow hard. They stared at the kitchen door, wondering when the food would be ready. Back in the kitchen, roll out the dough and cut it into thin, long shapes. Make sure to dust them with flour so they won't stick, she said, and Kalyan's actions were fast. His mouth watered from the aroma coming from the pot, and he was done within minutes with skillful knife skills. "All done," he announced, his tone filled with urgency. They poured the pasta and added the chicken as well into the stew, and let it simmer for 5 minutes before serving. The food was set on the table. "Let's eat," Ariella said, and the boys picked up their plates, but Ariella paused when she looked at the spoon. There was no fork to use. "Miss Ella, is something wrong?" Aiden asked, noticing her hesitation. The others looked over too. "Can you help me make something? Without it, it would be hard to pick the pasta," Ariella said with a helpless tone, wondering why she forgot all about this. "What's that?" Aiden asked, willing to help, but his stomach growled. The other heard her words and tried to pick up the pasta with a spoon, but it kept slipping back into the soup. And they became interested in what she wanted to make. "A fork. Just use a piece of wood to make something like a spoon, but with 4 sharp tines," Ariella said as she gestured for what she meant, using her spoon as an example. They quickly understood, but they quickly used the wooden spoons in the house to make those sharp demarcations. Claws formed in their hands, and they shaped it within minutes. It did out smooth, and Asher rinsed off Ariella's own and handed it off to her. "Here, miss," Asher said as he stretched the fork to her. "Thanks," she said as she took it off his hands. She was glad it didn't waste time or the pasta would have become soggy. Everyone had a fork as the pasta dipped in soup entered their mouth. The boys nearly cried from the deliciousness, wondering how such food existed. They buried their heads into their plates as they ate. Ariella felt it had been so long since she had eaten a proper meal, apart from the soups and bread that was always served every time. The tiger had it served on a flat plate for it. Its mouth was soaked in oil sheen as it lapped the food up. No one said anything, and the table only had sounds of chewing and forks clinking inside their almost empty bowl. The chicken pasta finished without any soup left. She leaned on her chair and rubbed her filled stomach, feeling satisfied and full. The boys were semi-full. They wanted to eat, but the food was gone in minutes. Aiden and Asher stared at Callian with an expression asking if he had learned the process of cooking this meal again. Callian nodded his head at them, and the both of them looked at him with kind eyes. They felt they had made a great choice serving under Miss Ariella. They would not have gotten to eat certain delicacies if they were with another bride. The tiger's white fur was stained with oil and crumbs as it licked itself clean. It gave Ariella a longing look, but its gaze dropped to the empty bowls. "Miss Ella, the food is so delicious," they chorused, their expression elated and filled with awe of her creations. They couldn't wait for her to cook all the food she talked about with the plants they got from the forest. Gradually, they were turning into a foodie before they were aware of it. Ariella smiled and rose from her seat. "I'm going into my workroom," she announced, and left the room. She remembered the courting gathering tomorrow, not knowing what to feel about having a husband, in fact, 3 husbands. She wasn't opposed to relationships, but how it would affect her life. She sighed under her breath as she walked into the room. She hopes for the best. The sun had already dipped in the sky, with cool breath entering through the opened windows. Ariella was fiddling with the oils Callian had bought. There were 3 types: olive oil, lavender oil, and tea tree oil, which they commonly had around. Which was enough for her. She could add other flowers if she wanted various fragrances. She sniffed its fragrance, her mind soothed at its scents, dropping it, her hands going for the processed honeycomb, picking up its wax. She finally wanted to make the balm for Granny Ruth after 4 days of long wait. She settled for a moisturizing balm with a mint floral smell. She could see various plant auras covering her tools for work. The blue ones were wrapped over the mouth opening of the containers, the pink around the mortar, and yellow around the little hearth where she would be doing the double boiling of oil. She got into work, seeing everything was in place. In a bowl, she crushed 1 tablespoon of beeswax and set it aside. Her hands picked up the container with a green aura and sniffed it. Seeing it was the olive oil, she poured 2 spoons of it into a pan. She walked slowly to where the hearth was and lit it up. Placing the oil pan, she added the mint leaves into the oil. She hummed as she controlled the red raging fire, bringing the mixture to a boil for about 20 minutes. She brought the oil down and could see particles of light surrounding the oil. It was as if the life of the mint mixed into the oil. She strained the leaves from the oil. On a lit-up hearth, she placed a small cauldron of water and placed the bowl of beeswax over it, double boiling it for it to melt. She added the oil, which was infused with mint, inside the melted wax. She stirred gently for it to mix well. A light scent of mint and honey wafted out from the mixture as she brought it down. She picked up a glass container and poured in the mixture. She had to leave it for it to cool and form before she could send it over to Granny Ruth. Pleased with her work, she nodded to herself and moved around the room, cleaning up slowly. Her hands accidentally touched the still hot pot, and she hissed under her breath as she held the lobes of her ears for her hand to cool. It's been so long since she had such accidents. She smiled as she reminisced the pain of spilt oils and burnt marks she had to go through the first time she started fiddling with oils. She shook off the memory and began packing up her tools. Stretching her body, she walked out of the room with the familiar taps of her cane. The morning buzzed with excitement as brides prepared for the gathering. Each wore hand-sewn gowns and scented themselves with essential oils and balms. Meanwhile, in Ariella's house, she slowly sat up in bed, still groggy, letting out a wide yawn. She changed into her workout clothes, took up her cane, and headed downstairs. Her household was already up, greeting her with a cheerful, "Good morning, Miss Ella." She nodded and headed outside, as was her routine, though today was special. They hoped she would get to find her triad today. Though they would miss her meals if she chose to let them go, they still wish her well. After spending the past few days with her, they had come to appreciate her quiet, peaceful nature. "We need to hire a horse carriage," Asher said, remembering the gathering was quite far from here. "I will go. I hope I will be able to see." Aiden said, his tone filled with hope as he dashed out of the room. How could they forget something so important? Ariella entered the house in time to see Aiden's running green figure. "Miss Ella, you have to prepare for the gathering. I have drawn out water for you," Asher urged while Callian entered the kitchen to roast the potatoes and bake some pancakes for breakfast. "Oh," Ariella exclaimed, remembering it was today of the gathering. It had skipped her mind. But she still moved slowly, with no signs of urgency, bringing her scented soap and soapwort shampoo she made 3 days ago, hoping it was still good. "Aiden, please get more water for me," she called out as she walked into the bathroom. She sat on a small stool and decided to wash her hair first. After scooping out the liquid, she damped her hair and washed it slowly. Aiden had heard her from the room and quickly brought in some water for her. After having her bath, she tied up her wet hair and searched through the box of clothes to take out the one suitable for the gathering. After knowing she could wear pants, she had dropped all her gowns. She picked up black pants and a gray-laced top. Just as she finished combing her hair, the sounds of hooves approached outside. She left the room with a small cloth bag in her hands. "Are we expecting anyone?" she asked as she climbed down the stairs. "No. Miss Ella, it's your ride to the gathering," Callian said as he brought out the roasted peeled chestnut she asked him to make her. "Here, it's still warm," he said as he handed the wrapped nuts over to her. "Thank you. Is the gathering far from here?" She thanked him and asked as she put it into her cloth bag, taking out some to chew on. "Yes, a bit far from here. We need to start going," Aiden said as he walked in, his tone urging them. "Miss Ella, you look beautiful." Asher complimented her from the side, the others nodding as well. "Thanks," Ariella answered in a smiling, soft tone. They left the house, Callian locking the door. Asher guided her into the carriage, with Aiden being their driver of the day. The horse is a midnight black horse, with wild, untamed nature. It neighed under its breath, and its hooves thundered on the ground as it galloped on their way. The dragon's realm species of horse are very different from the ones in the human realm. It could stand their pressuring dragon's breath. The carriage moved, passing by other carriages going for the same location. In the carriage, Ariella chewed on her nuts. Staring out blankly towards the open window, she saw brushes of color pass by, while absent-minded, with no mood of appreciating the colors. A thought just crossed her mind. Since the triads are actually, in a sense, not real brothers, doesn't that mean they had different mothers? She shivered at the thought of having 3 mothers-in-law at the same time. She had heard so much from just one, and now you add 2 to the equation. The matter was if their mothers would willingly accept her after finding out she was blind. She relaxed at that thought, already setting her mind for rejections. However, she was biased in her thinking since they are good people out there, but she was not fully betting on that thought process. It is better to be single and live a peaceful life than marry only to endure their mother's hidden dislike. She settled into a calm acceptance, ready for whatever came. Her teeth crushed the nut in her mouth as she chewed. After an hour, the carriage finally reached its destination. Other carriages were parked as well, with beautiful ladies dressed in beautiful gowns getting down. Ariella stuck out like a sore thumb with her choice of attire. She did not care about their covert stares on her body or the sounds of whispering. Instead, she needed water. She forgot to take some water with her, and after that amount of nuts she chewed, her throat was dry. "Callian, can you get water? I'm feeling parched," Ariella said. "Okay, I will be right back," Callian called out and jogged to the back of the building. In front of them was a large building on the scale of a stadium and could house millions of people. The woman looked in awe at the huge, intimidating building in front of them, when flying dragons came with a huge number of ladies. This building is called the courting ground, the only one in the dragon realm. It was large enough to house everyone coming to get a wife of a triad husband. Both nobles and commoners alike mix on this occasion. The ladies watched as more ladies joined them. Some ladies started entering into the building, feeling the outside was getting crowded. The inside was magnificent, with glowing crystals shining like stardust in the ceiling, and seats with tables filled with refreshments. As more people entered, there was still enough space to roam about, and the strange thing was a cool wind blowing into the room, keeping the temperature cool. "Miss Ella, here's the water." Kalyan was able to find her since she remained beside their carriage. He placed the glass of water in her hands. Ariella's throat soothed immediately as the cool water flowed down. She let out a satisfied sigh. "Let's go in," Ariella said, but she found they didn't move. A questioning expression appeared on her face as he turned towards them. "Miss, we all can't follow you in. It is against the rules for us to follow the bride into the building," Aiden explained in a difficult tone. "They wanted to guide her in, but they can't break the rules set out for centuries." "But didn't Kalyan go in to get me water?" Ariella asked in a puzzled tone. "I went through the back, not inside the main building. Miss, should I look for your friend to guide you?" Kalyan replied and suggested his idea to her. The other felt it was a good idea. Their mind didn't settle on her going in alone. "No, I can go in myself. I don't want to spoil her courting experience," she said, waving off his concern with a firm but calm tone. "Before you boys started serving me, I have been moving quite well on my own, so don't worry too much. I will be all right," Ariella uttered, a soft smile blooming on her face as she calmed their fears. She patted Asher on the shoulders and walked calmly into the building under their concerned gaze. Inside the building, Ariella followed the green auras filling the room, her cane tapping as she moved. Some were intimidated by her beauty, but seeing her dull eyes, they felt slight a tinge of pity, while others seemed relieved. Ariella could feel the base of their emotion on the color aura that mix into their green, but she can't read their minds. Only base things like jealousy, anger, pity, and the like. She did not bother to think what was going through their minds. She had received far worse glances than this, and this was just a child's play compared to the horrors she had witnessed. She moved slowly into the room, stopping in a far corner. She searched for the seat, feeling the wood on her hands, and sat slowly on the chair, adjusting comfortably to it. The number of green lights was so uncountable that she wondered how such a large building was built, or where they were outside in the open. She shook her internally. She could see glowing white shards up the ceiling and knew the sky did not have such a glow to it, so they could only be indoors. "The kings are here. Check if my hair strengthened out well," a woman whispered excitedly to her companion, interrupting Ariella's thoughts. She pricked a listening ear to understand what was going on. "Greetings, your majesties." Ariella heard chorused greeting passing back and forth, and she turned wanting to know who they were greeting, but she could not see any aura due to the large crowd, and she gave up searching. Suddenly, the crowd grew quiet under Caden's stretched hand. The ladies' hearts were beating loudly in their chests as they laid their gaze upon the kings, both the outer brides and the female raised in the realm. "Let the courting begin." His deep voice was held over the large room, which was a feat, regarding how wide the room was. He left these words and sat back in his chair with his triad. The triads who were holding themselves before spread out into the room, going to the ladies they had taken a fancy to. Some bold women went toward the kings, and a high-born female started the discussion with a soft giggle leaving her lips. "Your Majesties, I heard of you triumph against a behemoth abyssal beat. I admire you. Your Majesty, is it true you are looking for a bride?" As the kings were wrapped under the praise of women, they communicate through their mind on which royal daughter to pick. Their criteria were based on the woman's birth from a strong dragon gene. They are not choosing based on affection, but on how it would improve the bloodline of the offspring. So the new human brides were off their list since the very beginning. "What of the lady from the Worsfield house?" Reed asked, through their link but otherworldly. He was smiling and answering the lady's question. We still have to check with our soul stone if she is compatible with us to some extent. We don't want a female dead in our hands. Logan accepted, but dropped his suggestion. All right, let's go through the test. And why didn't I see signs of our sisters in the building? Cadian asked, feeling it was unlike them after they had been actively choosing Triad for the past 2 years of becoming of age. Logan and Reed were both silent as well. They glanced at each other with cluelessness and concern about the sisters' sudden change. At Ariella's side, many males approached her, but finding out she was blind, they left soundlessly without a harsh word spoken. Ariella came to realize it was not even their mothers. It was the Triads themselves, and she could get the underlying truth of wanting a stronger and healthy offspring. They could not be blamed for thinking this way. The fight against abyssal beats, so they wanted to give their offspring healthy body to last more on the battleground. And none of the other ladies were rejected. She was only the odd one because of her eyes. Ariella felt it was a pang of pity for herself. It seemed she would miss out on the pleasure of intimacy and companionship. But she was not all that bothered. At least she could continue her routine life of producing more food products and selling her scent balms and the like. A smile crossed her lips as she envisioned the future ahead, and she could not wait to go through the process. She leaned back and dipped her hands into her cloth bag and held a handful in a hand, eating it slowly and peacefully, but some dead-brained people always like to ruin people's peace. Sister, it seems no one had chosen you. Sigh, such pity. Leora said in a gleeful, scorn-filled tone, feeling refreshed after noticing the rejections Ariella had been getting. It was like all the years of her jealousy being soothed. Ariella chewed slowly, her expression peaceful at Leora's words, finding no insult in it. Crack! Leora frowned, her glee fading. It felt like she was performing a one-woman show. Tsk! Pretend well. You will be left alone and die lonely. Her words were so vicious that the surrounding men frowned, feeling uncomfortable. Are you done? Ariella's bored tone distorted Leora's expression. Anger clouded her mind, and she lunged at Ariella. Hatred burned in her gaze as she aimed her ring at Ariella's face. Seeing her hands getting closer, an elated smile flashed through her eyes. Finally, I can destroy her face myself. The crowd froze in shock, but what happened next left them stunned. Bang! Ariella swung her can with precision, slamming on Leora's knees. The force pushed Leora to the ground as another hit landed on her butt with a resounding smack. Leora's shrill screams made the men in the room wince, hating their heightened senses. Ariella calmly went back to her munching like she was not the culprit. Her swift attack was seen by some men around, and they all looked at Ariella, almost doubting she was faking her blindness, but seeing her dead, icy blue eyes. They felt a pang of pity and chucked the attack as luck on her path. The brides cast fearful glances between Ariella and the crying Leora, marking Ariella as someone not to cross. Leora's face flushed with embarrassment and pain, her ladylike demeanor down the drain. Her skin pricked under the stares, praying no potential Triad had witnessed her humiliation. She shot Ariella a hate-filled glance before picking herself up. Limping away with her head lowered to the ground, with gritted teeth, she cursed in her mind. Slut, I won't forget this. You will rue this day. Ariella grew bored with the gathering, the 9th time she was politely rejected. Her nuts had already been eaten by her, and now she was left looking at the auras passing back and forth. A yawn escaped her lips, her eyelids heavy with sleep. She couldn't wait for the gathering to end. She was not going to attend next time. It was a waste of time. On the other end of the hall, the kings were feeling impatient with the women's chattering, their faces stiff with smiles. Logan exchanged glances with Cadian and Reed. We have to choose one fast. Remember, we have to train for another duel with the esteemed lord. At Logan's reminded, they shivered, their back breaking out in cold sweat as they remembered the pain of their bones being crushed. Their expression became so solemn that the women around them stopped talking. Bride, we have to take our leave. Enjoy the party and mingle with other Triads. Cadian said in a warm but firm tone, politely telling them they weren't chosen and should check other options. The smart ones caught their message. Forced, gentle smiles appeared on their faces, but they were far from giving up. The foreign brides sighed in disappointment, knowing they didn't have a chance to see the kings like the brides born here. Selena's thoughts raced. If she could not have the kings, why not aim for the nobles? Her mood lightened at that thought, and she strode away. She was not as fixated on being the king's wife as before. Back home, she was taught to be perfect. The perfect princess, the perfect wife, like a being without thoughts or dreams. Only to move higher in rank and make connections to make her kingdom stronger. That all ended when she saw the life of the women here. She questioned why she wanted to marry the kings in the first place, only to realize it was for her father's ambition to become the strongest kingdom in the human realm. The past few days had stirred a thirst for freedom. The teachings drilled into her since childhood wavered as she questioned everything. She felt truly free. No rules, no disappointed glances, no murmured judgments. This freedom was so intoxicating that she could not untangle her and could only let it consume her. Who cares about her kingdom? At least the dragons were paying handsomely for the brides, and her father should have enough resources to fight against the abyssal beast. Her conscience is clear. She tried her best but would make the kings not choose her. With a genuine smile that lit up her very being, she mingled with the other triads. Laughter bubbled from her lips as she twirled to the music, the steady hands of her partner guiding her. The gathering entered well into the night. The crystal lights above the ceiling shone brighter. The brides who had chosen the triads of their choice danced happily, and giggles and laughter filled the surroundings. In the shadows, the dancing turned heated. Soft moans reached Ariella's ears, making her frown. In that corner was a triad who found their bride, who matched perfectly with their soul crystals. A woman swayed between two tall men, their hands trailing over her as they moved to the music. The men's gaze darkened with lust when they felt their bride's body rubbing against them. The woman's face was flushed, her eyes moist and dazed with power when she noticed her control of them. And she grew bolder, her finger traced through the opening of the clothes, her fingers trailing the man's bare chest. A groan slipped his lips, and her lips curled into a seductive smile. The man at her back trailed soft kisses down her nape, causing soft moans to leave her lips. Ariella watched their aura entangle with each other, the green color becoming darker with lust, and she took it as her chance to leave. She tapped her cane against the floor, weaving through the crowd, unfazed by the soft moans and sighs around her. She hummed along with the music, wondering if Mary would have found her triad as well. Stepping outside, a cool breeze lifted her hair. She paused, inhaling deeply. She opened her eyes, admiring the particles of moonlight surrounding her, and a smile brightened her face. No one was here to witness such an enchanting sight. The building behind her was filled with music as the party ranged on. Deep inside a cave, gold and silver light gleamed against the cave wall. A golden dragon blended perfectly with the color it didn't move. Xavier growled lazily, gold coins and crystals shifting as his tail moved. He stretched, relishing the cold touch of his treasure. His feline eyes gleamed with boredom as he stared at the crystal-dotted ceiling. He was tempted to go back into deep sleep, but he just awoke from one. After ages of existence, nothing piqued his curiosity until he recalled the sound of a heartbeat. Why don't I stretch my wings? Who knows, I may encounter the creature that heartbeat belongs to. With that thought, he rose from the treasure bed. Gold coins slipped down his scales. As he shifted into his human form, his bones realigned and his scales retracted into his body. In place of the golden dragon stood a tall, broad-chested man. His blue-tipped black hair cascaded at his back as he strode naked towards the cave opening. A playful smile curled his lips as he fell straight down from the opening. The wind whistled as his hair floated upward while he fell. Just before hitting the ground, he transformed mid-air. Wings burst from his shoulder blades, his spine rippling as scales spread across his body. His body expanded, growing 10 times larger. With a powerful beat of his wings, he soared through the sky, playfully rolling mid-air. With no destination, he flew towards the sounds of loud heartbeats. A figure watched Ariella leave the gathering and followed after her with a cold, murderous intent. Ariella tightened her fingers around her cane, already aware someone was trailing her. She calmly walked between the carriages in search of hers when she felt a change in the air. Her body reacted before her mind, dodging to the side. The sound of glass shattering disturbed the quiet night. Ariella turned to the side to see the familiar aura of Leora, but this time it had a red hue to it. So she wants to kill me this time around. Ha! A turned sigh left her lips, turning fully to Leora's hiding place. Foolish. Why are you so obsessed with me? Speak while I am still in a good mood. Ariella's commanding tone caused Leora to snap. It is always this expression of being above everyone that ticks her off the most. What gave her the right? She was just a blind orphan, not ever worthy enough to breathe the same air as her. Leora seethed as she stared at Ariella's serene face, but the quiet, secluded surroundings suddenly calmed her. Do you want to know why I hate you so much? Her voice dripped with hatred as she silently picked up a glass shard from the ground. She tightened her grip and stepped closer to Ariella. Why? Ariella asked, curious to know why such hatred overcame her. She knew she had never once provoked Leora in any way. Why? Ha! Don't you know? Are you trying to mock me? Leora screamed, her body trembling badly from suppressed rage. Ariella was even more confused. She thought hard but found nothing, so she could only wait for Leora to continue. You stole everything from me. My father's affection, my reputation. Leora screamed, gripping hard on the glass shard. Seeps of blood trailed out from her hands, but she was so consumed by her emotions that she didn't notice. Ariella was dumbfounded at her words. She thought her ears were playing tricks on her and couldn't help but ask, Is that all? Her voice trembled slightly from disbelief. Leora didn't respond but lunged at her with the glass, aiming for her face. I want to see who would like you if your face is disfigured. She shrieked darkly. A crazy glee consumed her when she saw Ariella's frozen figure. Xavier arrived just in time to witness the scene from above. He swooped down, heart-pounding, knowing he wouldn't make it in time, but his feline eyes narrowed at Ariella's swift movements. Ariella swung her cane, striking Leora's hand. The bloodied glass slipped from her grasp. Another swing of her cane, the sound of broken cracking echoed through the clearing. Ah! Ah! Leora wailed in pain, her left leg dangling loosely as she fell headfirst onto the ground, which happened to be covered in glass shards. But Ariella wasn't done. With a swing, she broke her other leg. The sharp pain cleared the haze of anger, which gave way to terror. Tears streamed down her bloodied cheeks, trembling when she saw Ariella coming towards her with an apathetic expression, like she was a dead bug. Pete, please, don't kill me. I'm sorry. Leora pleaded with a shaky voice, moving backwards to flee. Her gaze darted back and forth, but no one passed, only her and Ariella in this secluded corner. Ariella stared at her trembling aura and could taste the fear oozing from her very being. She twisted the edge of her cane and a silver glint shone through. Leora trembled badly as the tip of the dagger pointed at her neck. Her heart pounded as she met Ariella's calm expression. It was now she knew Ariella had been indulging her all this while and could easily take her life if she pleased. She stared into Ariella's blank, icy blue eyes, and fear drowned her. Yellow liquid pooled below her. Provoke me next time. Ariella left her threat unfinished, the tips of her dagger piercing slightly into Leora's throat, and blood trickled down. Leora was frozen in fear, unable to move, or the dagger would pierce deeper. Tears streamed down her face as relief washed over her. Scram. With a flick of her fingers, the dagger retracted into the cane. Leora did not wait for Ariella to repeat herself. She crawled away, unable to walk with her broken legs. Ariella sighed. Her mood sank when she smelt the rusty smell of blood. Rubbing her brows with a frown, she followed another direction, unaware someone was watching the whole scene from above. The surroundings fell silent, and a figure landed on the area where Ariella was standing a moment ago. Xavier rubbed his chin, a smile curling his lips. Interesting, he drawled, his eyes brightening up as he recalled Ariella's skilled actions. How could she accurately land a hit with those blank eyes? He had found something that piqued his interest, and he wasn't going to let it slip away.